Right, Rangers supporters, take a breath because there is a lot to unpack after what we witnessed this weekend. Coming out of those results, the reality is staring us in the face. If there is one side smiling right now, it is Heart of Midlothian. While Rangers and Celtic took points off each other in another ferocious Old Firm clash, Hearts quietly positioned themselves at the summit. They now sit clear at the top of the Scottish Premiership table, and the pressure has shifted dramatically. 6 points is not a small margin at this stage of the season. It means Hearts would need to stumble more than once, and at the same time both Rangers and Celtic would have to be flawless from here on in. When you look at Rangers' away form in particular, it is difficult to argue that absolute consistency is suddenly going to appear overnight. The title race has tilted, and unless something dramatic changes, Rangers are now chasing rather than controlling their own destiny. The match itself was the definition of a game of two halves. The first 45 minutes were everything you want to see from Rangers in an Old Firm encounter. The intensity was there from the first whistle. The press was aggressive, coordinated, and relentless. The forwards hunted in packs, the midfield stepped high, and Celtic were pinned back inside their own half for long stretches. Rangers were direct, brave in possession, and fearless out of it. It genuinely felt as though Celtic were clinging on at times, struggling to cope with the tempo and physicality. When halftime arrived, it felt as though it came at the perfect moment for the opposition. Rangers had momentum, belief, and control. The energy in the performance suggested that if they continued in the same manner, the points would remain in blue hands. But football at this level is not just about intensity. It is about adaptation. And that is where the tide began to turn. Early in the second half, Celtic adjusted. They altered their shape, introduced fresh legs, and began to find more composure in possession. Rangers, on the other hand, did not respond with the same clarity. Instead of tweaking the structure or reinforcing the pressing triggers that had worked so effectively before the break, there was a sense of hesitation. The first key decision came when a forward was withdrawn in favor of an additional midfielder. On paper, the logic is understandable. Reinforce the center of the park, regain control, protect the lead. In practice, it disrupted the balance that had made Rangers so dangerous. With two strikers in the first half, Celtic's back line had no time to settle. There was always pressure from multiple angles, always a body closing down, always a passing lane cut off. Remove one of those strikers, and the entire dynamic shifts. Suddenly one man is expected to replicate the work of two. The press becomes easier to bypass. The back four have an extra second on the ball, and at this level an extra second is a luxury. The lone striker found himself isolated, chasing shadows at times, unable to replicate the collective effort that had unsettled Celtic earlier. Rangers continued to play in the same direct manner, but without the numbers to make it effective. That disconnect allowed Celtic to build through the thirds, regain composure, and slowly wrestle back control. What compounded the issue was the lack of a visible tactical adjustment to accompany the substitution. If you remove a striker and bolster the midfield, you must also adapt the way the team functions. Perhaps you slow the tempo, retain possession longer, invite the opposition forward before breaking. Or perhaps you introduce another forward to maintain the aggressive press. Instead, Rangers attempted to operate as if nothing fundamental had changed. The shape was different, but the approach remained identical. That mismatch between personnel and strategy created spaces that Celtic were quick to exploit. Momentum in football is fragile, and once it swings, it can be incredibly difficult to reclaim. There was also a noticeable shift in mentality as the second half unfolded. The fearless forward press that defined the first period gradually softened. The defensive line dropped a few yards deeper. The urgency in closing down diminished. Rather than continuing to attack with conviction, there was a subtle sense of trying to protect what had already been earned. Against a side like Celtic, that caution can be costly. They thrive when given time to dictate rhythm, and once they began circulating the ball with confidence, Rangers were forced to react rather than impose. It is in those moments that leadership on the pitch becomes vital, and that is another area that continues to raise questions. This is not about calling for drastic measures or knee-jerk reactions. It is about recognizing patterns. There have been signs before of inconsistency between halves, of performances that start brightly but fade when the opposition adapts. Managing a top club in Scotland demands more than passion and initial intensity. It demands in-game awareness, the ability to read shifts in momentum and respond decisively. On this occasion, Celtic's adjustments were clear. Rangers' response was less so. The tactical battle after the break did not favor the side in blue, and that ultimately shaped the outcome. Of course, responsibility does not rest solely on the touchline. The players must shoulder their share. Game management, decision-making under pressure, composure in key moments, these are collective responsibilities. Yet when a match pivots so sharply after halftime, scrutiny inevitably falls on the changes made and the instructions given. Rangers had Celtic on the ropes in the first half. The opportunity to press home that advantage was there. Instead, the structural shift diluted the very strengths that had caused problems. It was not a collapse born of lack of effort. It was a collapse rooted in misalignment between system and execution. Now attention turns to the upcoming cup encounter against Celtic on Sunday the 8th of March. That fixture suddenly carries even greater weight. With the league picture becoming more complicated and Hearts holding the advantage, the cup may represent the clearest route to silverware this season. Confidence will be flowing through Celtic after clawing their way back, while Rangers must regroup, analyze, and respond. The blueprint from the first half is there. The intensity, the pressing, the bravery in possession, it all worked. The challenge is sustaining it, adjusting when required, and ensuring that tactical decisions reinforce rather than undermine the team's strengths. Because if Rangers can marry that first half aggression with smarter in-game management, the story of this season is not finished just yet, and the next chapter begins at Ibrox with everything still to play for looking ahead to that cup clash. The biggest question hanging over Rangers is not about quality, because the first half at the weekend proved the quality is there. It is about conviction and adaptability. When Rangers play on the front foot, when they commit bodies forward and press with coordination, they look like a side capable of overwhelming anyone in Scotland. The issue is sustaining that level and recognizing when a game demands subtle tweaks rather than wholesale shifts in identity. In a knockout tie, especially against Celtic, margins are razor thin. One hesitant spell, one poorly timed adjustment, and the balance can swing irreversibly. That is why this week on the training ground becomes absolutely crucial. There needs to be an honest review of what worked and what unraveled. The first half blueprint should not be discarded simply because the result was disappointing. In fact, it should be studied and reinforced. The distances between the lines were compact, the pressing triggers were clear, and the transitions were sharp. Celtic were uncomfortable, forced into rushed passes and defensive clearances. Rangers dictated territory and tempo. That version of the team is capable of beating Celtic. The problem emerged when the structure shifted without the philosophy shifting alongside it. If Rangers are going to alter shape mid-match again, the players must understand precisely how their roles evolve with it. Another factor that cannot be ignored is mentality. There have been too many occasions where Rangers appear to lose authority in matches that they initially control. Whether that is a confidence issue or a leadership gap is open to debate, but it is visible. When Celtic began to grow into the second half, there was a palpable drop in collective belief. Instead of doubling down on aggression, the team retreated into caution. In high-pressure fixtures, that instinct can be fatal. Leaders on the park must demand more, organize the press, keep standards high, and prevent that subtle drift backwards. Winning silverware requires not just tactical clarity, but psychological resilience. The cup presents an opportunity to reset the narrative. League campaigns are marathons, shaped by consistency over months. Cup competitions are sprints, defined by singular nights and moments. Rangers do not need perfection across several fixtures to lift the trophy. They need one complete performance at a time that can liberate a squad if approached correctly. Instead of dwelling on the league table and the 6-point gap that now separates them from the summit, the focus narrows to 90 minutes, or perhaps 120, against a familiar rival. In those scenarios, intensity and discipline often matter more than broader league form. There will also be selection dilemmas to consider. Does the manager stick rigidly with the structure that dominated the first half last weekend, trusting that lessons have been learned about in game management? Or does he introduce subtle variations from the start to anticipate Celtic's likely adjustments? It is a delicate balance. Overthinking can be as damaging as stubbornness. The key is ensuring that whatever system begins the match, there is a clear secondary plan ready to deploy if momentum shifts. Substitutions must feel proactive rather than reactive, designed to reinforce strengths rather than patch emerging weaknesses. Celtic, for their part, will arrive with renewed confidence. Turning around a game of that magnitude breeds belief. They demonstrated that even when second best for extended periods, they possess the composure to stay in contests and capitalize when opportunities arise. Rangers cannot afford to offer similar openings again. Defensive concentration must remain high for the full 90 minutes. The midfield must balance aggression with composure, ensuring that pressing does not leave exploitable gaps. And in attack, efficiency will be paramount. Chances in Old Firm matches are rarely abundant. Converting momentum into goals is what separates dominance from regret. Support inside Ibrox could play a decisive role. When the crowd senses intent and bravery, the atmosphere becomes suffocating for visiting sides. That synergy between players and supporters was evident in the first half at the weekend. It needs to be sustained and harnessed. Early pressure, tackles that set the tone, quick transitions that lift the volume inside the stadium. These moments feed into a cycle of belief. If Rangers can channel that energy while maintaining structural discipline, they can tilt the emotional balance of the tie firmly in their favor. There is also the broader question of what this season represents for the manager and the squad. Progress is rarely linear, particularly under evolving leadership. Mistakes are part of growth, but they must translate into improvement. The weekend's setback highlighted areas that require refinement, adaptability, in-game communication, and mental fortitude. Addressing those does not demand a complete overhaul. It demands clarity, clear instructions, clear contingency plans, and clear accountability. If Rangers can emerge from this period sharper and more self-aware, the disappointment may yet prove instructive rather than destructive. Ultimately, the cup tie is about response. Elite teams are defined not by the absence of setbacks, but by how they react to them. Rangers have shown flashes of excellence this season, spells where their football has been dynamic, assertive, and fearless. The challenge now is to string those spells together and eliminate the lapses that undermine them. Sunday offers a stage to demonstrate growth. It offers a chance to prove that the lessons from the league encounter have been absorbed. And it offers an opportunity to remind everyone that while the title race may have shifted, the hunger for silverware at Ibrox remains fierce and undiminished as the season edges toward its decisive stretch. Any details about your favorite team? It's extremely important for Celtic FC fans. In a move that's left the Scottish football world scratching its head, JPP has suddenly announced the cancellation of the match that had already taken place between Rangers and Celtic, sparking a wave of rumors that show no sign of calming down. The decision dropped without warning, and within minutes, speculation was running wild across pubs, phone-ins, and social media timelines, with supporters from both sides demanding to know what could possibly justify such an extraordinary step. Officially, there has been little more than a tight-lipped statement, carefully worded and noticeably light on detail. Unofficially, however, several theories are doing the rounds. One persistent whisper suggests that something behind the scenes did not sit right with organizers, perhaps linked to administrative issues that only came to light after the final whistle. Others hint at concerns raised by officials reviewing post-match reports, with claims that procedures may not have been followed as strictly as required for a fixture of this magnitude. There is also talk, purely speculative at this stage, of external pressures playing a part. Some insiders believe commercial or broadcast considerations could be involved, while more dramatic voices are pointing towards security or compliance questions that allegedly emerged once the dust had settled. None of this has been confirmed, but the lack of clarity has only fueled the fire. What is certain is that the announcement has reignited debate about governance and transparency in the Scottish game. Supporters are asking how a contest of such importance can be effectively wiped from the record without a full explanation. Until JPP comes forward with clear answers, the vacuum will continue to be filled by rumor, conjecture, and the unmistakable sense that there is far more to this story than anyone is yet willing to admit. Greetings, fans. Make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel, as it's greatly appreciated by Rangers FC. And don't forget to share your thoughts on the news in the comments section below. Until the next video, stay tuned.